Hey, you! Yeah, you. I have a question to ask. What do you think of whenever you think of California? Well, if you're anything like me, your answer is probably going to be something like this. Amtrak Surfliner train, Hollywood, and countless wildfires. Those are all pretty normal things to think of when you think of America's most populated state, but I bet none of you were thinking of this. Now you might be thinking that, oh, so this is what the White Pass and Yukon route will look like if it was standard gauge. But this is actually the snowstorm that happened on Donner Pass back in 1952. Now you might be itching to know what happened. Why did the city of San Francisco crash into a snowdrift? Why did 222 passengers get trapped on the train? And how did they solve all these problems? Well, that's what we are going to learn about today. Now, first of all, we need to know what Donner Pass even is. Donner Pass, otherwise known as the Sierra Nevada, is a mountain range in California, partially going into Oregon. A rail line was constructed through it in the 1860s as part of the Transcontinental Railroad. Sometime in the 1920s, the Southern Pacific brought the line, installed a second track over the pass, and then started running trains in that order. Fast forward 70 years later to the late 90s, and we see the Southern Pacific get absorbed by the Union Pacific. So that meant the UP automatically took control of the pass. If you sit by the line today, you can normally find Union Pacific and Amtrak trains. In late 2020, a Roblox user by the name of Leroy8348 began working on a game to recreate the pass as it was in the early to late 50s. So yeah, a pretty uneventful but yet normal history. Now you might be asking me, well, Fred, you said there was a dramatic snowstorm at the beginning of the video, and you'd be right about that. Now, with that history lesson out of the way, we can finally get into the story of the Great Snowstorm of 1952. The winter of 1951 to 52 in Northern California was pretty chilly to say the least. Roads and rails alike were getting freezed over or getting blocked by snow, but despite this, they still had to keep moving. And now I'm going to introduce you all to the city of San Francisco. No, not that one. I'm talking about this city of San Francisco. The city of San Francisco was a streamlined train that ran from 1936 to 1971 on the Overland Route. Sorry for the stuttering, I'm having a British moment. Like Grant would say. It will run between Chicago, Illinois and Oakland, California with a ferry connection to San Francisco. It was jointly operated by the Southern Pacific, Chicago Northwestern, Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul, and last and certainly least, Union Pacific. It offered a premium extra fare service as well between Chicago and San Francisco, and it had a full runtime of 36 hours. Now, that might seem like a pretty long time by today's standards, but back in the Streamliner days, that was a pretty speedy service. Now, you might be wondering, how did such a luxurious and nice-sounding service end up like this? Well, our story starts in Chicago, Illinois, on January 10th, 1952. The city of San Francisco is currently waiting at platform number 1. The crew of this train is still unknown to this day, so we're just going to call these two Frank and Paul. The engine that was actually running the train doesn't have a model in Roblox, so we're just going to use the closest thing to it, this EMBF-7 in daylight colors. At 5:55 a.m., the train was ready to go. Frank pulled on the throttle, and the train is underway. They have no idea of the events that will take place later in this journey. Before they knew it, they were outside the city limits and halfway across the country on the main line. And the train is making quite good time, actually. At 4:30 that day, they stopped at Julesburg for a crew change. Just like the last crew, we don't know their names, so we're just going to call them Dean and James. At 4:20, the train was ready to go once again. The crew settled in for a long yet cozy night. Those are compared to the outside, that is. Around 6:30 p.m., they pass through Truckee and start climbing Donner Pass, as was part of their route. Now, the weather on Donner Pass was, well, let's just say not pleasant. There were avalanches up and down the pass, but the train had to keep running. Besides, what could possibly happen? But the crew was about to learn just what could happen. Alright, so have you got any more funny dad jokes for me? Yeah, here's one that happened about 3 years ago back in '49. So I was, boiling some water in the kitchen, don't ask why. And the old wife came in and said, "Honey, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm making holy water." And she asked me, "Well, how are you making holy water?" And I said, "Because I'm burning the heck out of it." Hey, that's actually kind of funny. Oh, we gotta focus on the line. Oh crap, you're right, James. At least we didn't get into an accident, right? Okay, let's see here. We're following the speed limit.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
They ran into a snowdrift. Around 2 hours before impact, something caused an avalanche, and the avalanche just so happened to slide on the tracks. They couldn't start their engine back up because the snow was too thick, and the engine was starting to freeze up. They couldn't get out on Dean's side because the door was frozen shut. They couldn't get out on James's side either because the snow was just too deep. Dean called the yard manager at Colfax for some help. And then later, the dispatcher. Until then, they had to occupy themselves with other things. Please, for the love of God, turn that off! Meanwhile, in Colfax, the rescue mission was underway. All the nurses, paramedics, and railroad workers are on the train. AC-12 Cab Forward, number 4205, will take the train over to Yuba Pass, where the incident took place. It is not going to be an easy trip to make, to put it lightly. Equipment would often break, the snowfall is brutal, and they have to go slow as to not set off more avalanches. Now let's get back to our friends Dean, James, and the 222 passengers on board, shall we? Dean? What, James? It's been 24 hours, and I'm freaking bored. You know, this is all your fault because you should have never told me to make a joke. That means I could have paid more attention to the track. It was your decision to tell the joke in the first place. Oh my God, it's finally here! After 18 hours of battling snow and altitude sickness, the rescue train was finally there on January 14th. At this point, all that really mattered was getting the passengers out and off the mountain. After the final preparations are made, the icy convoy makes its way down to Truckee. They made good progress at first, and they were able to make it pretty far, but that would soon all be thrown in the trash. Alright, are you happy now? We're getting pulled back to Truckee. Yeah, but I gotta ask, how did they get up here without suffering from hypothermia and dying? Good question. Alright, just 40 more miles to go. About 2 hours after departing, they ran into another avalanche that slid onto the tracks due to 4205's whistle. Dang, it was that loud? Now, not only was it stuck again, but the leading unit was derailed as well. So now they needed shovels and a crane too. The cranes and shovels were provided first, but the shovels didn't do much. So 2 cab Fords were called up the pass, number 4282 and number 4155. But by the time they got up there, the convoy wasn't able to move because they were frozen over. So with the change of plans, they left the cab Ford and the rotary on the siding, then coupled up to the back of the train. Then it set off. And this time, they actually made it down the pass. They made it to Colfax on January 16th. And after that, supposedly came hundreds of lawsuits. The story made national headlines. When it arrived back in Truckee, it was met with hundreds of journalists and news reporters. The only question now was, how did management allow such a thing to happen? If the train took a different route this time round, like say anywhere that's less snowy, then none of this would have happened, and they would have to call for a relief train. Despite knowing that there was a blizzard on the pass, they still wanted to run trains, despite the obvious risk that they faced. So, what's the moral of this story? What can we take away from this and apply to ourselves in our day-to-day lives? Perhaps trains and snow aren't a good mix, or perhaps just don't joke around in the cab. Well, yes, we did learn a little bit of those things today, but the answer I was looking for is never trust companies. They don't care about your health or safety.